I'm the Senior Director of the Centre for Teaching and Learning here at Concordia University, and it is my absolute pleasure and honour to welcome you. Day 2 of our Saltise conference and to our panel discussion on emerging technologies in education. Before we begin, I just want to say how pleased we are to be able to host the Saltise conference once again here at Concordia. Many of you will know that Saltise and Concordia have enjoyed a really close relationship over the past few years, and this is a relationship that we're very happy to continue. I should say that I'm a relative newcomer to the Saltise community, to Montreal and to the province. I moved here just this past August, and I think I'd barely unpacked my bags when I had my first meeting with Liz. She came over to Liz Charles and wrapped up. Before we met, I thought I had a sense of what Saltise was, in that it was a professional network. But even after that conversation, I learned that Saltise is far more than a professional network. It is a community. It's a community of scholars. It's a community of practitioners. It's all of us here in the room today, and I'm very, very happy to call myself a member of this community. So we're going to get things started. I'm going to introduce our two moderators, who will then introduce the panelists this morning. Our first moderator is Preeti Raman, who is a member of the Department of Computer Science at Toronto Metropolitan University. Our second moderator is Remy Amora, who is the manager.
We talk about the potentials and pitfalls of these emerging technologies. From artificial intelligence and virtual reality to adaptive learning systems, rapid technological advancements promise to unlock boundless educational potentials, as we've all been exploring throughout this conference and throughout the last 2 years now. However, there's lots of challenges still that are unexplored and bothering us, including concerns around digital equity, privacy, information overload, misinformation, disinformation, and the need for critical digital literacy. So this special plenary session that we put together features a panel of various experts, each discussing these issues in the area of their expertise. Each panelist will provide their perspective and share their experiences. And I can only hope this is going to excite us, enrich us, and also get us thinking. My name is Preeti Raman. I am a CS professor, a computer scientist at heart, but an educator through and through. I'm from Toronto Metropolitan University, and I work in multiple worlds of caring, care, thinking about people first, knowledge building, and integrative analytics. And because
I've come from knowledge building, I'm constantly thinking about how can we improve our ideas and how can we ask questions of us all the time? Why do we do what we do? And why do we use what we use? And here with me is Remy Aurora, who many of you know as the manager for the Lab of Innovation in Teaching and Learning at Concordia University. Remy has been active in higher education for as long as I've known him, and has been instrumental in putting this panel together and getting this conversation started. Thank you. Thank you. We are so lucky to have this diverse group here with us in conversation. They've taken their time out, not just today, but over the last couple of weeks, engaging with us and with each other in conversation. And today they're going to engage in conversations with each other and with you. They're scholars, researchers, educators, students, creators, and just plain wonderful people. Thank you so much for joining us. Cora.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this session. A little bit about myself. My name is Cora Wiley. I'm a learning scientist, education researcher at Digital Promise, which is a global nonprofit that works with educators, researchers, technology leaders, and communities to design, scale, and investigate innovations that support students in the learning process. So I come to this space from teaching in the classroom, so they're at varying levels. So about 10 years of classroom teaching experience, primarily in the STEM fields. And from those experiences and really wanting to develop a deeper understanding of how to support as many learners as possible in the development of integrated, deep understanding, that took me into out of the classroom and into the research space, education research, with a particular focus of technology and professional development to support teachers and how to effectively use that technology for equitable pedagogy. And so currently, some of the research interests and areas that I am in centered around human-centered learning analytics. So looking at, yes, all the data that we're able to collect, but how can we use and understand that data to better understand and support the learning process with a clear focus on student learning. And so understanding how technology has really enriched the learning environments, really working with ed tech developers in rapid cycle design testing processes that are co-design based, inclusive in their orientation of the process of developing those technologies. And one in particular centers on supporting motivation, engagement, and persistence. And so how to develop product features that support those aspects of the learning process. And then more generally, just all aspects of equitable education and the learning experiences of students who have historically and systematically been excluded from the educational systems and processes. And so how to ensure that what's being developed is working for truly all students. So as I mentioned, at Digital Promise, but more specifically, I'm in the Center for Inclusive Innovation. And so as we engage in understanding, design, and scale of educational technologies, these are just some of the tenets that we attend to. So I'll elaborate perhaps later on, but just to go over dealing with collective ownership, so having the full participation and collaboration of all people who are impacted most closely to whatever challenge that is being solved for. That is especially for students who are ultimately the ones that are being served by the educational process. Being sure to attend to the context expertise that the people that are a part of that design, evaluation, and scaling initiatives are valued for the expertise and the variety of expertise that they bring, making sure that equity is throughout the research and design process, and then really thinking about impact and being guided by the notion of reimagining progress. So not just attending to the same ways that we've measured progress, but really making sure that that progress is something that works for all the communities involved. And that happens through this process of making sure that you build capacity as a part of whatever the innovation is, so that the community can sustain and make sure that it continues to serve them over the long term.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marco Luna. I'm a filmmaker. I've been more than 10 years. I've been involved in films, in post-production, and also started researching in immersive technology, especially in VR and AR. Through that process, I was kind of invited to participate on a researcher in interactive documentary filmmaking here at Concordia University. and also have experience being a Peruvian guy. So that's I'm happy to be around here. By the way, there is imagine that on that frame down there is an incredible video playing about immersive technology that we could not play around. Yeah, so it's
Así con sus
something in the middle.
amiguitos.
Anyway, the idea was to
Después vuelve a...
the mix between filmmaking and VR that I've been involved to. Can you put the next slide, please? Part of my interest, the next slide. There you go. So part of my interest is I basically gravitate in three strategies, I would say, and I'm sharing this with you. Please don't tell this to anyone. I like new technologies. Really want to make sure that there is this need of democratizing production workflows. So understanding the new technology and make it available for different artists and different creators. We need a diverse voice of creators and not only just one group that holds the technology and those are the one decided the type of experiences and projects that we need to look at. So at that point, I'm basically Marco, the tech geek who's always looking at new technologies and trying to figure out how the workflow goes. And the other side, because of my working at Concordia, I also like to start creating or participating or promoting collaboration and co-creation. I think that is an important element here about looking at new technologies, emerging technologies, and how much we can understand it from our own little hub, and the need of creating a team that have the diverse point of view, like the Avengers, trying to solve this, attack one specific technology. That's also part of my journey. So at that point, I become a matchmaker app. And at last, my filmmaking background allows me to push this idea of I want to see how we can translate stories into other type of media, in this case, VR. So I'm going to show you quickly the last two slides just to give you an idea of how I operate. In the Milieu immersive storytelling studio, with the technologies there, I've been working there for more than 5 years now. We receive different groups of faculty and students, and they're all trying to explore immersive technology. But here's how I see it, okay? This is the latest project I'm involved in, and you can see there all the technical skills that the team is fostering and building, and you can actually count all the needs in terms of research and how we can use this machine and blah, 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 blah. But my real interest is on the next slide, another way of reading these photos. Can you put the next slide, please? That. On that same photo, you will see a student from engineering, a filmmaker, an instructional learner, an electrical engineer. So you see the team that is being brought together in order to look at that specific technology. And that is what excites me the most, because what I've learned in these years is that you really need to co-create by assembling different point of view. And that's why I'm here also.
Welcome, Marco.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Teresa Hernandez Gonzalez. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Education here at Concordia. To tell you a little bit about me, I've always been an educator. I don't think I've done anything else in my life, quite boring. I'm not very good at small talk, but if you get me to start talking about education, that will be it. But if there are the three elements that have been pushing me to explore my role as an educator, will be the learning to learn, motivation, and emerging technologies. I'm always dissatisfied with what I do, and I'm always trying to learn new things to keep me updated and motivated in my tasks. Currently, I am the director of a teacher education program here at Concordia, and I try to inject future teachers with that dissatisfaction, so we keep making education better and better as much as we can. And those three elements, the learning to learn, motivation, and emerging technologies, have been translated into 3 applications in practice. So the idea of exploring learning to learn took me to the field of assessment for learning, putting assessment not as something that we do at the end of the learning process, but something as that guides our learning processes, and it's a effort with the learner. The roles of the learner and the teacher, they get blurred by having a common goal, and we're more of a team getting to that goal. Then motivation took me to explore the world of gamification, if you can go, yes. The idea, my understanding of gamification, not so much as implementing points and the usual use of gamification that we see in the classrooms, but rooting the heritage of video gaming into why games are so effective. And exploring the 3 basic needs that we all have as human beings, as having control over our learning, feeling that we are developing our mastery, and that need for relationship with other people. And then the third one, which is the exploration of emerging technologies, took me more recently to explore virtual reality. And I had the chance to work with Marco and Remy in an amazing project where we are trying to build simulators for future teachers. With that envy that I felt of pilots and doctors, that they get to practice their competencies in virtual reality environment, and why not teachers? It feels that we learn the ropes in dealing with real kids and real colleagues, so why not try to take advantage of virtual reality? And we are currently in phase 2 of this project. In our first phase, in the word virtual reality, in the first one, we try to focus on reality, trying to replicate different scenarios that a teacher might encounter and practice the specific competencies to develop in those contexts. We're not very happy with the result in terms of like how much we wanted to get from it. And we try now to focus on the second part, on the virtual reality. So now we are trying to focus not so much on building specific competencies, but emotional regulation that can come from creating environments that are not so much real. For example, when a teacher feels overwhelmed in a classroom, and now we are creating an environment where you are submerged in water, and what do you do to regulate those emotions when you don't know what to do to deal with the situation, how to regulate those emotions. But the point is that we are using emerging technologies to see if we can develop the field of education, try to expand our boundaries of what a teacher education can look like now and hopefully in the future. And I'm very excited to be part of this panel with my other 4 colleagues. Thank you for being here, everyone.
Thank you, Teresa. Welcome, Joel.
Yeah, hi there. My name is Joel Wiebe. I'm a PhD candidate at OISD University of Toronto. I got started in the field of computer science and have since moved into the field of the learning sciences. So I would say I'm a learning scientist plus computer scientist in progress. One of the things, on an aside, putting this slide together, I realized how much my beard had faded in color. So I'm now becoming also one of those academics that have pictures of me that looks like it was 20 years ago. But neither here nor there. Let's jump in. So for the last 8 years, I've been designing and working with learning community technologies. And over the past little while, and especially moving into this summer, I'm working, kind of returning to an earlier passion of mine around AI. So I'll mention those briefly. Yeah, so in terms of my work with learning community activities, I've been engaged in co-design with practitioners. So this has been a range of projects. I've done cooperative and collaborative learning activities for undergraduate mathematics. I've done some student inquiry activities for primary school classes, and adaptable and co-regulation of learning activities for middle school classes. This summer, I'm moving into a bunch of exciting new areas. So this includes social learning in active learning classrooms, remote learning for teacher professional development, automated scoring with AI for students' responses during inquiry activities, and one that I'm particularly interested in right now is at-home adaptive learning. And so specifically the question that we have around that is, how can we improve the pedagogical intelligence of AI to provide personalized learning for underserved students? And so pedagogical intelligence, I believe, is coming, not here yet, but just like teachers need lots of experience in order to become great teachers, AI will also need vast amounts of data within this space. So I'd say right now we are in this pre-pedagogical intelligence phase, where especially generative AI has a limited ability to understand the learner and to be able to properly adapt for that learner. So the work that I'm currently working through this summer is to create a catalog of these different pedagogical and instructional movements, and putting those together in a way that AI can hopefully apply them and then help to learn how to apply them better in adaptive learning context. So yeah, thank you very much. Looking forward to discussing more with my panelists.
Thank you, Joel. I was so curious about this image with the animals. I wonder what that is.
That was my attempt at an AI-generated image for knowledge of science being computationally understood and produced into numbers and values. So yeah, automated scoring of students' responses.
Marco approves them.
Totally good.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome, Joel T.
So speaking of beards or the loss of beard over time and AI avatars, that's kind of me, an experiment in trying to create an avatar of myself, actually as an experiment done at a recent talk that I couldn't attend with a collaborator from Dawson College, Robert Stevens, who is a co-lead with me of the Dawson AI Artificial Intelligence Initiative, had the recent For Omni version of ChatGPT present to a group of educators about what's going on at Dawson College. This is a little bit about me, father, husband, educator, student, lifelong learner, researcher, sometime program developer, hopefully great colleague. I've been really interested in student engagement for as long as I can remember. When I started teaching, at least I feel the vocation for it. It's just an image of some of the things that might be relevant to emerging technology here. I'm Anishinaabe Ojibwe, and I'm really interested in Indigenous STEM and STEAM futures. Really interested in taking learning out of the classroom and into public-facing venues where students can feel validated and not under the pressure of assessment. I feel like we're in this age where assessment models are changing by necessity, but we have opportunities to recognize where the learning really takes place, and that's the real world. Let's meet the students there. I'll just give you a couple of perspectives on some of the research and development work I've been doing. Next slide, please. I'll talk a little bit about maker education as a frame as well. We have a session in the afternoon where I think most of our students will be there, but we had 25 interns this year running their own Arduino-based projects. So I'm really interested in open source hardware, open source software, how to simulate that, how to put that into practice in real-world projects, and give students the opportunity for an experiential learning frame. So I think maker education, maker culture, and many of the things that have been mentioned by fellow panelists really is an opportunity to look at science for all, STEAM for all, robotics for all. Arduino for all is the project that we're presenting in the afternoon. But the idea is that this can go not only into the classroom, but into co-curricular activities and other venues where students can learn deeply about emerging technologies. AI education is something I'm really passionate about. I've been working with great collaborators for a number of years at Dawson since 2019, when we started the initiative there. We've been working on a lot of pilots, and now we're moving into a more mature phase, and hoping to share with the not only the college network, but more beyond that, to find that pipeline to university and down into K-12 education, and think about how everyone's responsible for implementing a robust, interesting, and beneficial AI education strategy, because it's here. So I would kind of take, we kind of joke with colleagues about our oscillation between techno doomers and to techno optimists. Somehow we're in this middle place where we have to understand and to be techno pragmatists, and really to see what not only the challenges are, but what are the opportunities for us going forward. So that's a little bit about me. Very, very happy to be here on the panel, and thank you for having us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Remy. I'm the manager for the Lab for Innovation, Teaching, and Learning here at Concordia. So thank you to all our panelists for being here. We wanted to take the time to introduce you to them because our format here is a little bit different than maybe you're used to. We think we're innovative here, maybe we're not, but we're hoping to try something together with you in the audience as our guinea pigs. So the idea that we're going for here is that our panel has met before. They've had a conversation. The result of that conversation was a few burning questions that each of them wanted to ask themselves as panelists, but also to pose with the audience. So assuming we don't go too long, there will be some time at the end for some Q&A. So if you think of questions that you want to ask the panelists, please note them or remember them, and you'll be able to ask, hopefully, a couple of them to be able to get to that point at the end and have that conversation at least dynamicized that way. I think we're killing the online polls, so that's not up there. The slides don't even read that. And then we're going to get to the Q&A, and then each question will be presented by one of their panelists, their burning question that they're going to present to you and to themselves. For the concept of emerging technologies, we went to so this is basically how in our conversation we chose to define it, at least for the purpose of this, sorry, I'm not even microphone, for the purpose of this talk today, or of this panel. So I'm not gonna read this through because we're a little long, so you can see it and have an idea. This is basically how we've defined it, at least for this purpose right now. We're trying to link it a little bit to the quite fascinating talk we had last night or last evening with Mutlu in with the keynote yesterday. So we're gonna hopefully tie in with a lot of the points that he raised yesterday. Let's move on to our first question. Joel T.
Okay, so maybe just to frame this a little bit. When I think, just taking the AI frame for a second, when I think about AI, we're teaching students and ourselves and everyone who's impacted about AI. We're also teaching with AI. We're learning with AI. We're learning about learning through AI, like all of the learning theories are embedded in these algorithms as sort of this key emerging technology that is so transformative and is so rapidly changing the education landscape. There's a question that kind of occurred to me as one of the important questions, and that involves how it will impact student learning and the future of assessment. So I'll just pose it to the panel here. What do you see as some important affordances for emerging technologies to student learning and assessment?
Cora, would you like to take that?
Yeah. Can you all hear me okay? Do I need to bring it up? Yeah. Okay, ish. All right, so we'll go here. I appreciate the question, and in thinking about the affordance, particularly for student learning, I kind of take the perspective from the knowledge integration framework. If anyone familiar with that framework, Marsha Lynn's work, it's kind of based on this notion of in order to develop integrated knowledge, kind of like deep, robust knowledge, ideas need to be surfaced, right? So based on the experiences, prior experiences that the learner has had. So eliciting those experiences, creating opportunities for them to add new information and discover, and then opportunities to then distinguish between what they're hearing, what they're discovering, what they already think, and what's applicable for the topic at hand and whatever phenomena they may be engaging. And then also having those opportunities to connect and revise their thinking in light of that new learning. And so central to that process of learning is providing students with emerging technology the opportunity to develop that deep, robust, integrated knowledge, and doing so through these transformative experiences. And so I was struck by something that John McLeland, is he with us today? It was a session that he did with VertMac, and he made a comment that just was so, for me, very powerful, because I think it resonates and it's so very true. He said, before you can teach, you have to support students in building the image, right? And so what are the emerging technologies that can help students build the image? And so some of the things that come to mind are augmented reality, for example. And so with augmented reality, it creates the transformative experience that students can be connected to, let's say, the past and the present, that they can understand their position in place of what else is around me that they may not, depending on their particular life experience, haven't had an opportunity to come to know. And so it's hard to develop knowledge if you've never actually had an experience with something. And so augmented reality extends the world of the students and helps them to see things that they may not have been able to see. And it's transformative because, yes, they may be able to go out, but they can't necessarily go back in time. But with technologies such as augmented reality, you can overlay kind of the historical perspective to help them to see how they are temporally situated and how things have been shaped to bring them to the point where they are, and to develop a deeper understanding of themselves and the world around them. Another aspect that I think one of the affordances for emerging technologies is virtual reality, and bridging, as I mentioned, kind of has a STEM education background. And so bridging from the nano all the way to the supra macro, and helping students to see beyond what is visible with their eye, but to really come to develop the image of what's happening at the molecular level, or what's happening at the span of time and the universe that is beyond the visible view, to have perspectives that allow them to then think beyond just getting an understanding, but then to start to imagine and to create and evaluate, because they have this deeper understanding of how they are situated in the world around them across time. So I think that's one of the affordances of emerging technology.
Thank you, Cora. Very interesting, your take on the affordances of emerging technologies. And I will add to your take on it of how augmented reality and also virtual reality can help create that image for the students. One other affordance that I see in terms of how disruptive emerging technologies can be, that maybe finally we are being forced to teach content as the guide for our teaching and learning, and finally put competencies as the guide for what we are doing in our classes.
I love that. The idea that competency-based education has to be connected to content, I think, is something we struggle with, and the opportunities for grading assistance and like offloading some of the work we do as educators onto technology in order to focus on the student experience and the personalized experience. A lot of what you're saying, Cora, too, was really resonates with me. And I'm thinking about this notion of how we can connect this to the true competencies that students will need to thrive in the AI era. And I think we're trying to figure out how to shortcut the old methods of evaluation and bring us into a moment where emerging technologies are not just something that happens in the media lab, or you're talking about scaling all the way from nano or bits and atoms all the way up to the macroscopic world, but will be available and accessible to all. And so getting our heads around how to use these technologies effectively for student learning engagement, for just-in-time learning, for assessment, for accelerated learning, and for really an opportunity for personalized education. I think it's not ready for prime time, but really this question is key for us to figure out as a community.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Cora. Thank you, Teresa. Teresa, you have the second question.
I do. And it's linked to the previous question. If with these new affordances, how are emerging technologies changing the role of teachers in facilitating these basic competencies in education? So as an educator of future teachers, I grapple around this question. If technologies in general and these emerging technologies are questioning the role of teachers as the experts in the class, how is that changing the role of the teacher? If we are not the experts anymore, where are we?
Yeah, are we facilitators now? That's really interesting. Also, are we entering into an age where we'll be in perpetual professional development, right? Where we're always having to learn new technologies, how to integrate them into the classroom, what are the best practices, and knowing that they're changing from year to year so rapidly. It feels like our roles as educators might be shifting in ways that we hadn't foreseen. This is sort of a new thing that I grapple with and I worry about. Do I have to keep pace with all of these technologies? A bunch of colleagues are working with VR. I really want to work with VR. I have no time to work with VR. How are we going to learn about this? How are we going to best integrate this into the classroom? And what kind of pressure is that putting on training? Right, the institutions who would train the future teachers. How do we update the skills, competencies, and knowledge that are needed for not only for our students but for the teachers and educators who deliver those skills and competencies to them? I think it's a very difficult question, and I'm not sure that there's a good answer. But somehow there has to be a combination between grassroots, bottom up, and top down. Right? We can't. Things are moving so fast. So I think it's up to all of us to kind of figure that out together. But the role of teachers is definitely changing.
Yeah. If I could jump in just to add to that a little bit more. And as I read this question, I was thinking about what are some of these basic competencies, and are those things changing in this time of emerging technologies? Because I think one of the interesting things that I've kind of seen during this process is we were initially told these 21st century skills, these were the untouchables, these were the things that weren't going to be automated, not replaced. And then now we're seeing where those are the very things that these generative tools are beginning to target, whereas things like creativity, like critical thinking, communication, collaboration, where now these are their bread and butter. So it's interesting to see how that is stepping in. And so like when we saw like the introduction of a calculator, where kind of a student was relegated to the kind of the first few steps and the last few steps, where like you had to understand the problem, you had to know what numbers to put in, but then the computation was covered by the computer. But now in the age of generative AI, we have to figure out what prompt to put in, but now it's not just like numbers, like numerical computation, but now there's cognitive tasks that are being performed. And so I think that's kind of an interesting moment in time where we have to start thinking about now when we're putting these types of tools into the classroom, how careful do we have to be in the types of cognitive tasks that we're offloading from students? And will that gap continue to grow in terms of the expectations that we have on children? And do we really want to start giving up these 21st century skills? So I don't know, in terms of the role of the teacher, one of the things that comes to mind is maybe some kind of a separation of doing and learning. Because I think if we have do a task, I think there'll be more and more offloading onto these technologies, because like computers are great for automation, they're good for entertainment, they're good for information, and they're good for scaling up a solution. So I think we need to be very cautious and maybe focusing on like what are those processes of learning that we want to target. And to reference, Mutlu's talk from yesterday, how can we use these tools to put the proper guide rails on them so that they're either so that we're able to internalize the knowledge from these emerging technologies, or we're able to cognitively enhance students using these emerging technologies, but we're very selective in the ways that we are just dropping something into the class, and like whether we're thinking very specifically about what we're cognitively offloading. In terms of teacher education, I think there were a number of AI competencies brought up yesterday as well. But I think too, like one of the things being done at OISE is they've built, and maybe this is being done at a lot of other institutions, but they built active learning classrooms in which they're putting these emerging technologies for the purpose of pre-service teacher education. And so I think that has to be an essential part too, where you can't learn in a traditional class and then go into the workforce or into your classrooms once you're teaching and suddenly be able to know how to use these emerging technologies to support competencies, but starting right off with pre-service education and facing those challenges. Here are the technologies, here are the competencies. How can we figure this out at this stage in our development?
That's right. I think that we have a lot of figuring it out to do. And I agree with you that we need to, this is the responsibility of the universities to prepare teachers for these changes that we need to embrace in education instead of being at the end of the wave, as we usually are, trying to be more ahead. And as I was listening to your answers, I had the idea of a teacher being not the one putting in place the scaffolding, but as being the scaffold of what's happening, questioning what are those support structures that are embedded in ethical, constant questioning, incorporating indigenous knowledge, questioning the ethical standards that education is being supported on, and then bringing that, being the scaffold in the class, and then the students being the pieces that are building in the or completing the building that you are trying to create. So then every class is a different building, but you were the scaffold that created that structure for whatever shape you come up with. But I think that we really don't know what the role of the teacher will be as we are starting to offload a task that are traditionally being attached to the role of the teacher. But I want to be hopeful and not wait for others to have that role attached to us, but have a leading and have a voice in the conversation of what teachers need to be doing in the classrooms nowadays.
I think linking that to yesterday's talk with the idea of making these deliberate choices and not having them be imposed or just defaulted because we didn't bother to take the time to actually consider what it is we're doing. When you talk about the calculator doing the computation, sure, there's things that are doing things, and it will, if we let them do the coding, for example, and we choose to like abdicate our role there, then at some point we won't understand the coding enough to know what it is actually coding. So it's something to think about in terms of these choices that we're making. And we're at the moment where we have to start considering these choices as active choices that we're going to make, rather than we're going to let be made for us by people who are, as the example was given yesterday, doing a summer project trying to revolutionize teaching. You know, 2 guys revolutionizing teaching in a summer project, and they're going to solve the problem. Something to think about in terms of who's actually doing that and who's doing that for us. Thank you for the answers. Marco, I think you have the next question.
Yes, yeah, hear me? Yeah. Yes, because I'm hearing all this and I was like, oh my God, you teachers are carrying a lot of weight on your shoulders with trying to deal with emerging technologies. And we said, why should we only be you in the classroom? Why should we, you're the kind of the forefront of a big workflow of elements that have been created to use this technology. I would think about VR, in case of VR, for example, VR is like a piece of paper. Like you're holding a piece of paper. You can do many things with this piece of paper. You can do origami, you can draw on it, you can paint on it, but it's still a piece of paper, it's a canvas. That technology is a canvas. What you actually need is the specialized people who are creating elements for this canvas to have a use. So the problem is not necessarily the technology itself and how accessible it is. It's a hell to set up a classroom with all headset and everyone put the headset, and it's more complicated to have access to actual projects that can speak into into the classroom. Why? Because you have to go back and see who are making those projects and what is the group of the technologies that are using this specific app, and why are they releasing this. So my question here is, when it comes to integrating the uses of new technologies in the classroom, are we only thinking about the space itself? Can we also create our own experiences? Can we also actually participate on the production of those elements? So then we can better fit and tailor what we need, instead of just having a piece of paper that is already being colored in red with some words that I don't need, but I have to use it as a teaching tool.
No, I'll jump in on this one. Love that point of not at the end, but how can we, as educators and those connected with education, be situated at the onset of the development of these emerging technologies. And so one of the things that is actively at work in the US, facilitated by what I mentioned earlier, the inclusive innovation process, is bringing educators, researchers, tech leaders, the communities together as collaborators to design these emerging technologies and to think together through how they're going to be integrated into the educational experience. Because Joel, to your point, who has the time to learn it after it's already been created? But if that can be a process where we're learning together through the design, of the development and refinement of these technologies, then it creates opportunities to bridge that knowledge gap of understanding what it is, so that we can get to the point of understanding how to use it to support the learning process in ways that are meaningful, substantive, and transformative for students. And so it also kind of connects to this idea of building the capacity as a part of the outcome. And that it's not, okay, we're gonna design with you today, we're gonna build it, and then we're not gonna talk to you again. And then we're gonna design to do something else, and you were only a part of the process at one time at the very beginning. But what does it look like for that team to be established as an ongoing basis, where the capacity doesn't just lie within one privileged group of people, which right now have a lot of different values, drivers, agendas. And so there's this complex task of bringing the whole collective of people together to address the problem so that the solution works for everyone. And so kind of a key challenge, but that's being worked on, is developing the infrastructure that's needed to bring educators in conversation in the development process of these technologies, how to access students, because it is gonna take a lot of data, but maybe that data should not be shared, thinking about how is it used. And so rather than having those decisions be made by others, having the people whose data they are to be a part of that conversation and make those decisions around use and implementation.
I would just want to add something to this question, just because it's my own personal, haven't solved this yet in my head. How we learn anything when we deal with past emerging technologies? So we had video games for many, many years. So we had a chance to actually develop in video games. So when home consoles were out, that was considered new technology, emerging technology, and that was a tool. There you go. So after many years, have we learned anything? How successful we are in using this in the classroom or not? Have we failed? Because now we're gonna be attacking VR and AR. In 10 years from now, we're gonna be attacking another technology. And the question is, what have been our success? Where is the World of Warcraft for education? I don't know. It's like it's my honest question. I don't know. That's.
There's actually some people in the room who are actively doing that and working. I can see Darren laughing because we actually, as part of the lab for the innovation and teaching and learning, we worked on a Minecraft project where we took Minecraft, the most popular, so more popular than World of Warcraft, and put it into a classroom and quite effectively demonstrated that you can teach an English class in the world of Minecraft, entirely in the world of Minecraft, with some podcasts as lectures, and with some readings, but reflections. And it's a process that is where the students are doing something else and they're learning while not realizing they're learning, and they're discussing and actively working with the material without even realizing what they're doing. It's called the allegorical build, and I invite you to go to the little site and figure it out, but there's people actively doing this, and there's not enough, and there's a community that we're trying to build with this, but it's actually quite fascinating work. We'll move on to the next question, if that's okay.
Cora, you have a
Cora,
question.
sorry, yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, this is a question that I think really speaks to the point of what we're seeing of how the impact that technology is having on humans, and thinking about it from the ways that it often disconnects. Right, so there are certain technologies of keeping people in touch, and you can upload your life experiences and have everyone in your community who's near you and far away to know what's happening. But somehow that vision got lost, and even though we're seemingly more connected, there's a felt disconnection. And so I think it highlights a real threat that technology poses to human connection. So as you all think about that, and to offer to the panel to discuss, how can emerging technologies be developed and used to increase human connection?
I'll answer that because I always have this issue with VR when it was released. It was a firework. Everyone wanted to try VR, and the first time you put a headset on, it was, oh my God, this is incredible, it's amazing. And then there is this hype curve, and then it got lost and lost and lost. At one point, everyone's talking about this empathy machine, and everyone, as soon as you put VR in and you are inside someone else's reality, then you're gonna feel it, you're gonna be connected, and you know what? These are themes that have been also discussed in other areas. In documentary filmmaking, we've been looking at this, and it's like, how actually is that really happening? Is that how many layers of cheating or senses do we need in order to actually create that full empathy? Are we aiming for total cinema? So my feeling is that sometimes we put so much weight into the shoulders on one specific technology. So it's like VR is going to solve everything because now everyone will feel connected because everyone will be able to see someone else's face and going to speak directly and going to see him in 3D and we're going to see the environment. And if make it step back, if we look at how artists have been exploring immersive environments, and there is a lesson to be drawn there on how stories are built and how storytelling plays a big role. You can create immersive environments without necessarily working with 3D technology, and that is the element that kind of, for me, puts a hole into what concept of human connection. What is the type of connection that we're looking at? Is it actually? Are we still thinking that adding more text and more peripherals and more touching and then the AI is going to come back to you and it's going to feel like you're a human, that is actual human connection? The best human connections that I have working in different VR projects has been working with the team behind that everyone is bringing different types of points of view. That's the best human connection you can get. You bring that to class and have all the students actually working around. It's not about the outcome. It's about the process.
Wow, amazing.
I think we can pause to clap. Yes.
Can I jump in? I love this analogy of the empathy machine. Fortunately, it makes me think of Brave New World and kind of the feelies. I don't know if any folks have read that, but the idea that this could be a dystopian outcome too is what we hear a lot from students, and maybe it's a combination of technology and the COVID experience, but social isolation is a huge issue, even in the company of peers. And I worry about emerging technologies, and to your point, Cora, that you made earlier too, like who owns the technologies, right? Who owns the data? And so I'm a very big proponent of open source, and I think we have a huge opportunity to help folks with emerging technologies in remote communities anywhere in the world to get access to the best education possible, but not necessarily only in the hands of tech companies, but in the hands of, public institutions and public partners and nonprofit partners. And I think everybody has to contribute to that. And so the opportunities for, again, accessibility and democratization of education, and the sharing of cutting edge educational resources all around the world, I think can help us with bringing communities together, right? One of the examples of VR that I'm fascinated with is being able to go to the field or bring the field to you, wherever you are. So I think emerging technologies, if used correctly in a democratic fashion, I shouldn't say correctly, but used well and for good, with multiple partners and stakeholders, can definitely be used to increase human connection. And really we have to face this post-COVID social isolation problem, I think that young people are feeling.
Yeah, so I really appreciate the points that both of you made around what's the use, right? And kind of redefining connection, and connection as being a part of relationship. And so how things are used can sometimes either threaten relationship because there's exploitation, there's there's a lot of mistrust that it gets established, and that serves to like disconnect. And so if used, as you say, well, and in ways that it's truly working for the people who are impacted by it, then that can help facilitate the types of connections that bridge and build relationships. So I really appreciate those points. And I think we'll transition.
Yeah, we're a little over what we planned. So I'm going to apologize to my panelists for what I'm about to do. which is kill the last question. And I'm sorry, I humbly apologize. I don't really have a choice because we have to do some Q&A, and we've got, people are gonna start getting, hangry. These are our panelists again. I invite you all to get it. We're going to jump to the Q&A, and if you're online and you have questions, we're going to field them as well. So by all means, and there's a roaming mic, I believe, somewhere. Thank you. Roaming mic right here. So I will invite our yesterday's keynote, if need be, if he's willing to if you want. No, okay, no.
Whitley,
If
do
you
want to
want,
join
think
us?
about it.
You're welcome.
There's a seat right here. I mean, it's no stress, no pressure. I was told that this might be an opportunity. You can think about it.
Join us.
Any questions from the audience at this stage?
Please feel free to ask your questions to a specific panelist or broadly to the panel.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Maybe this question is not well placed here, I don't know, but every time I hear people talk about how we can't let big tech, rule everything, I think, we need to start working together. And so as people who are working in higher education, what do you think needs to be done? I think it's probably going to have to be a grassroots thing. I think a lot of administrators are overwhelmed with a lot of things, and maybe we have to be the ones to push for this. But what can we do as people working in higher education to actually do something concrete and practical that rivals the control that big tech has, so that we take ownership over how these emerging technologies are being used in teaching and learning?
All right, thanks. That was perfect. That helps set up the question that we skipped a little bit as well. Yeah, so I think around that, you can let these big companies come in, a lot of graduating from Stanford, people going off and then working at these companies, and they get to make those decisions. And I think a lot of people have looked at emerging technologies as this big systems change problem that it's got to affect policy, it's got to affect infrastructure, teacher development, teacher training, IT, all those things. But I think what's even interesting is what you're referring to here, which is these teacher-driven solutions or approaches. Because if we look at the way that Google Docs was brought into classrooms, Google Docs was in there before the policies were in place. And a lot of these things, when you find a technology where there is value added, teachers will adopt it if it saves time, if it helps them improve the quality of their education, if either it helps them do something that they're doing better, or if it allows them to do something that they can't otherwise do. And so that's where I've had the privilege of doing some co-design with practitioners, where that's exactly what we do. We go in, we observe what are they currently doing, how can we bring emerging technologies to what they're doing. And if you can get these teachers and educators fired up, and there's so many of you here, I think that's where a lot of these innovations can start to blow up as well. And then when it starts at the grassroots and you see all that energy at the grassroots, I think the rest of the system has to change. I don't have any precise information, but I think just thinking about that idea of alignment. So if we can start thinking about technologies that align with the goals and the practices of practitioners, then we can start to see hopefully some scalable change.
I think, I'll just say, I think another opportunity is to shift the mindset of big tech, and really putting pressure. And this happens with funders. And so one of the things that Digital Promise is working on through this inclusive innovation, where it's educators, researchers, tech leaders, as well as the community, bringing them together, and also included in that would be funders, to say, in order for this to have a life and have the market share, it's gonna require uptake. And so how do we bring educators into conversation? And so one of the real tangible thing is being a part of and developing research practitioner partnerships that include edtech developers as a part of the community for design, so that everyone's in the room together. And so I think it's not just educators and researchers, but really expanding that to include the developers as well as who they are responding to, which are the funders and the investors.
I'll start with a comment and then I'll follow up with a question. So my comment is I really appreciate the optimism that you have about bringing the community together and having everyone seated at the table, but I just would like to bring our attention to the student encampments that are happening nowadays on university campuses around the world and how it's exposing the dark side of universities and education as money-driven institutions that are following the industry, basically. So as educators, and here comes the question, as educators that work for those institutions that are highly funded by the industry and collaborate highly with suspicious industries and make suspicious investments in industries, how do you see yourself in mode of resistance as educators, and how can we group ourselves together in order to fight the institutions we work for first, in order to be able to fight the industry second?
I can answer you this. I've been I don't know if it's an answer, but I can tell you something that is happening a lot in the fine arts area where I'm more gravitating around. Is that institutions are really white elephants, and they take too much to update, and sometimes they do partner up with other groups that not necessarily are going to align with your own ethics or your own rituals. So that happens with School of Cinema, happens with different groups. So the question is always, it's not about that association, it's more what are you actually doing with that technology you have now in your hands. And I see a lot of artists here taking it, hacking it, repurposing, destroying it, and using it for its own advantage, for its own purpose. You don't. I remember once UISOP came here to ask Concordia to have this meeting because they want to create a hub in virtual reality, and we said no, we are not necessarily going to partner with you because we need to foster more creation around virtual reality from different areas. That happened many years ago. I don't know what's going to happen if they come back to Concordia. Maybe they will say yes. I have no idea, but the important thing is that it's not the partnership that is good. It's actually if you follow into the same line. If you take that technology and then if you don't, you keep using it under their own values, and we do guerrilla training in documentary filmmaking. We're going to take digital cameras and we're going to go to communities and we're going to use something that is being that belongs to Apple, but then we're going to show them how to destroy it and tell their own stories. And then you can use the technology in a different way that it's been designed for. That's basically the point. And it's impossible to get around all this shady or complicated relations. What you do in class and how you use the technology and what is the philosophy behind, that is what actually matters, in my opinion.
Is there time just for? Okay, don't want to abdicate. I'll take personal responsibility. I work for a public institution, so ostensibly it's about the public good when the government pays your salary, and not about money. Leadership's a difficult thing. I'd like to just connect it to the last question. That maybe there's two elements that were just slightly missing but are also obvious. And the policy and regulation is gray, right? Who is responsible? Our leaders are responsible ultimately for making lawmakers, policymakers, and those from the top-down approach who are making decisions about, how these institutions will survive and thrive. But it's us from bottom up, grassroots, who can take personal responsibility and help us to see what are our common values, working within structures that aren't perfect. There is no human institution or society that is perfect. There's always going to be struggle and difference, and we're taking maybe a more optimistic view of what's possible with emerging technologies. From my point of view, what choice do we have? This is the future we have to make together. We have to solve problems. Yeah, we have to be realistic and pragmatic about what those problems and issues are. But and while I agree with resistance, I agree with pointing out difficulties in the world. We also, in parallel, have to be just allowing the world to function and putting in place solutions as best we can. And it's always going to be imperfect. And this is, I think, one of the beautiful things about being human.
Okay, thank you so much, Joel. I have a question from an online participant, and that actually ties into yours. And Mutlu, if you could give it a shot. So the question is interesting because this asks about those who don't use emerging technologies. So the question reads, what might we learn from people who don't use emerging technologies, either because they have agency not to, or because they lack access to tools?
I didn't want to take time of the valuable panel out of respect, but since the question is very specific to this, I think being able to say no is a right that we should be using a lot more frequently than we currently are using. In the sense that a lot of these technologies are somehow imposed upon us mainly because of the monetary values that drive these companies. And I think it is really difficult because oftentimes there is a seductive allure of an emerging technology. If something is new, so shiny, it is so well promoted that it's so difficult to be able to say no. But I think we should be thinking a lot more carefully with regards to evidence. I think we have the right to say no to a lot of these technologies. Let's think about all of these big companies, big 5 companies that are producing a lot of these products that are currently promoted heavily. When I speak to colleagues from these companies, I notice that even they do not know necessarily how much it costs to them to provide these technologies for free just to be able to create an initial user base, because they know in the long term, if they can generate this user base, they will be making a lot of money to recover out of this. This strategy works very well for a company, but I don't think it is a strategy that works very well for the end users, us. So without evidence, without an intention behind the use cases, I think we should be able to say no a lot more. I'm not touching upon the access issue because it's much broader and I don't think we have
Would
enough
anybody else like to touch upon it briefly before we...
Thank you.